Morning. How you all doing? I cleaned it up a little bit. Cool. A little more sparkly. Yeah. Here's my my golden thread going to my higher self out of my top chakra. So I was listening to the radio last night. WETSU is a great radio station, public radio station out of Eastern Tennessee State University, their flagship. And the evening after, all things considered, their news that, it's not my favorite, but it's okay. But they had Terry Gross, and she had a guy on who was doing a book about the Koch brothers. The book is called Copeland. And it goes into their history, where they came from, their father, big oil guy, in the 50s, 60s when they took over their daddy's corporation. These guys have a long view of things, like 40 years. They're not looking to make money like that. Well, they're looking to control. They're like, the, the Illuminati or whatever you want to call it. You know what? Let's see. Let's plug this in here. Maybe it might be better. Unless, how's that sounding? Better? Oh, there. Hey, Aaron. So I was listening. Do you listen to public radio? ETSU is a really good show. Every different college or public radio station around the country are different. The one in Asheville, when I was there, was a waste of time. The one in Roanoke, it's a fair. The one at ETU's excellent, right? So they have a lot of good stuff. They have some really good shows. And then on the weekends, it's all music, right? And they have 4 other channels that you can, they have a classical jazz channel, they have a regional kind of channel, they have other stuff. So they really do a good job, WETSU. So Tuesdays they have, after all things considered, they have Terry Gross. Every day they play the Fresh Air show over again. And then they have Your Constitution. And then they have Thursdays are really good. So Terry Gross had a character who just wrote a book called Copeland about the Koch brothers and how they've been involved. And, these guys have been unbelievably around forever. The Koch family history goes back 100 years. I mean, they are one of the major players in the oil coal energy, right? And they're one of the major reasons why we're still in a hydrocarbon world. Whereas in Tesla's back in the 1890s, he had 0-point energy, right? The hidden hand of the Mellon scandal. Hidden hand. Sounds familiar? It sounds like something I say all the time. Koch method, free market mayhem, right? Boots on the ground. They're the secret sponsors of covert operations of our politics, of the right. The Tea Party. The whole thing about Citizens United, who got unlimited money to be put into politics. And the other show that was on last night was a New Dimensions, and they had a gentleman talking. He was very similar to me. He was a shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic anthropologist, right? And go look up that show, and I'll go back and listen to it. And so New Dimensions is pretty cool because they have a think you can go back and listen to their shows. Maybe I got a lot of them. They've been doing it since the 70s. Fresh Air with Terry Gross. She also has shows you can go back and listen to, but just within that week in the show, like last night, isn't up there yet. Like tomorrow, it'll probably be up there. And so Terry Gross is good, but she has a very diverse show. They listen to a lot of stuff. But last night was good. This guy, The Cokeland, that's a book newly published. So go check that book out. The New Dimensions again was this guy was quite. I mean, pretty much everything I talk about, this guy was talking about how everything comes from the darkness, and that our senses are limited, so we can't, trust anything that we think we know, and you have to go way back to the old stories. And he gives a great story about the old crone, about the old crone, weaving a dress, and the dress is humanity's life, and it's amazing, it's beautiful, it's great, and but at the same time, the old crone has to go stir the pot of life, make sure nothing burns, that everything is balanced, and hey Twitch, Aaron, Rhonda, y'all, good to see you here. And so I was just talking about what I was listening yesterday in general. And, I'm living out in the woods, I read books, I write novels. I 2 or 3 times a week come to a place like this and have a nice meal. See all the, for $12, I had an amazing waffle with fresh berries and freshly made cream that they whipped up right there, and grits and eggs for $12, and a pot of fresh coffee. Good Wi-Fi, good phone signal. It's and I'm waiting for some people to show up, but a lot of people talk a good game about wanting to save the world, and what I find is that people, like over in Boone, where App State is, this is Johnson City, where ETSU is, and they're both about 30 miles in different directions from my front door. And both have, over in Boone is one place I have breakfast and has good Wi-Fi and phone, and this place has this place, and so, and I have 2 or 3 other places. I have one place that's maybe 10 miles from me. That's not that far away. Anyway, so so yesterday was an interesting day because I did a live chat, and we had Yo-Yo, and I thought it was John, the Canary, but it wasn't, because I went back and using my neuro-linguistic programming hack, I saw that, and it wasn't John, What it was a bot, was a computer algorithm that had gone and seen things I'd said about John, and then gone and looked at John's channel and built a persona. But it was so specifically talked about certain things, could only talk about certain things. Ergo, it was a bot, and it couldn't stray. It didn't have the human dynamic that John has, because John, within all his frustrating motifs, is actually a sweet, good guy. Go to his channel and go see the thing he put up on about, Ingo, right? And yeah, he got it from someplace else, but the direction that came from sweetness. And there's another one a couple of days ago where he's in bed with our neighbor's dog Daisy, and he was just so sweet to that dog. And he used to hate that dog, right? And the dogs used to come up, and I'd be outside meditating, and they would sit on either side of me and just kind of bathe in that energy. And John got to see that those dogs aren't really bad; they're really nice. And so he's gotten to like the dogs. He used to really hate the dogs and scream at them and try and chase them away. But the more you try and chase a dog away, the more the dog thinks it's a game and will come back, right? The thing is, never give a dog or any animal, if you don't want them there, don't give them food. Give them food, they're going to be there forever. Yeah, and that's why I was calling him Yo-Yo, because he was a yo-yo, you know. And so, the way to get to that is to illuminate it. What is that? Or ignore it completely, um, or just talk the way John talked to that dog. Oh, sweetie. Oh, honey bunny. Oh, look at aren't you a good bot? But yesterday was really interesting because I've got like more than 700 shows up on Dreamy Dreamland, and I suggest that you all take them down, put them on thumb drives and on the hard drive and CD-ROM, because the way that YouTube is, who knows how long it's going to be there, and what's going on. So all of this stuff, it's really interesting. So all of the stuff I was reading yesterday and seeing yesterday, and then the radio shows I listened to on WETSU last night. Again, um, Fresh Air with Terry Gross, and she interviewed a guy who wrote a book called Cokeland, which basically took apart what the Koch brothers are, what they've been doing, and pretty much everything that has been going on. I mean, they were the leading people to get Donald Trump elected. They are part of the hidden hand. Um, you know, and they are basically doing their darndest to poison the planet. And see, the thing about there's this group of people over at App State that are environmentalists, and people would generally call them tree huggers or granola heads or whatever you want to call them. But in essence, they're useless because they want to go on about sustainability. Well, to sustain the world we have now is it's forget about it. Meaning we have put so much heavy metals and poisons and carbon and methane into the ocean that it's a done deal. Forget about if you want to see what's going to happen. A guy named Art Bell and another guy who writes books did a book called, I think, The Day After Tomorrow, and they made it into a movie in the early O's, and that pretty much shows what's going on. The opening scene is the glaciers are melting. That's what they're doing. Like Glacier National Park used to have almost 400 great glaciers. Right now they got 8. They used to have something like the order of 400 square miles of glaciers. Now it's 15. So those glaciers are, the Glacier National Park is going to be gone within the next 5 years and not to come back. 1.5 billion people get their water for their everything, for their drinking, for their growing food, for their industries. 1.5 billion from glaciers. By 2030, those glaciers will be gone. Pretty much all of northern California, has going to have no drinking water because those glaciers that come, they won't have electricity. And between now and 2030, sea level will rise somewhere between 6 inches and 10 feet. Now, the quote-unquote experts can't tell you which one it's going to be, but either one is going to be a problem, even if it's just 6 inches. Places that never got, like right now, out in the Midwest, places that never got flooded are getting flooded. Rivers are going the wrong way. All the Great Lakes are like, acting like nasty, angry oceans and chewing up the coastlines. So cities like Chicago, all of the the nice walkways along the ocean, along the lake is getting chewed up. And the water is slapping up against houses and apartment buildings, and Florida's going to be underwater. And this relatively soon, 10 years, you know. And Donald Trump was put in there, and he will win again. If he runs against Joe Biden, Donald Trump will be president again. And now, what people have to realize, Donald Trump is actually a great president because what's his name? Obama was no better than Donald Trump. No less a crook, no less any of the above. And what's really good about Donald Trump, he is showing the American public exactly who their legislators are. And he's like, he's not hiding it. He's not, classy enough to pretend, And so we've had, sock puppets for president, since George Washington. The other interesting thing that I was listening to was Your Daily Constitution, which is another show from ETSU, and they were talking about freedom of religion and what that was in the First Amendment. And those guys are really good, so they really were at it. So they're, go back and go online and Your Daily Constitution, ETSU. Go look at that radio show. That guy always has really, every American citizen should know their Constitution. My uncle, who was the chief of police of upstate counties, he got that job by marrying the right woman. And he was a Mohawk Indian. He looked like straight off the nickel. And, he was like Andy. He was never wore uniform, always khaki shirt, khaki pants, cowboy boots. But he loved driving in his police car. And in the back, he had no guns. He never carried a gun. Never even had a gun in the car. And he had boxes of the Constitution. And if he stopped you for anything, he'd give you not a ticket, but a Constitution. And he goes, okay, I'm letting you off for this one. Here's a Constitution. Learn this. If I ever see you again, you better know it. And so let's see what we're saying. Good morning, yummy. It's pretty funny. Or a boat. But no. So on the thing on New Dimension, they had this guy talking about, psychosocial, cultural, forensic anthropology. Where do you hear that often? Moi, right? This guy was, a more published version of me, a more scholastic, but he was saying, hey, forget the scholastic thing. So he's hung out with the folk in the grass skirts, he's heard the stories. He's been part of ceremony. So he really talked about it all. And basically what he was saying was, as I keep saying this, it's all an illusion. And the only true thing is love's co-creation. And where we are at this place of in between, betwixt and between. And if you look at history, every time we've had something like this, it's an uncomfortable position, right? And, it's like having a obelisk stuck up your butt. No matter how much gold they got on the top, it's still uncomfortable. So we're in this, and 2012 was this, not the end of times. It was the end of those times, the beginning of these times. And it was this time that we're in, betwixt and between. And, in India, they talk about the Kalahugas, which are these periods of time between different times. And we're between the Piscean age, getting what you want through force, and the Aquarian age, understanding what you need through truth. So we're right between these, so we're in a betwixt and between. And so what we have to do, guys like me, so I'm old. I've already gone through that period of being older, that 10 years when I worked for the corporate world, after being, the scholar for 30 years, I, I kind of said, I have no money. I should, go work. I'm always being, hey, can you do this for us by the corporate guys? So I did that for 10 years, made a lot of money, but all it did was kill me. It made me live a hedonist life for 10 years where I gained, 280 pounds and I died in a plate of spaghetti. But, my job wasn't open. I came back, I'm now down to, 210 from, almost 500 pounds. So I'm alive. Yes. That kind of stress over 10 years kind of did a lot of things in, which, not going to come back. But I am no longer, in that period, I was an old person, right? Because I was kind of being run by fear, right? Oh, I'm not going to have enough. How am I going to pay my bills? That. And whenever you hear someone, no matter what their age, if they're talking like that, they're an old person. But what I am now is an elder. And what an elder is a person that stays open, understands all and listens to everyone to give advice. That's what I am as a griot, tell you a story, Again, from the beginning of me always saying, hey, don't believe anything I say. This is only for your fun and giggles. And that's what life is supposed to be about, fun and giggles. Back in the day when I was the minister of fun, until I realized etymologically, minister of fun means the total controlling Yahoo of total distraction. I said, okay, I can't be that. And that's why I became the griot, the shamanic griot, Sensei Al-Ba, So, and I'm here for you guys, right? To listen to you and to give you advice and, tell you stories that make you go, and make your life better, help you go in a direction, and the boat we need to build is the cadre. That's the boat we need to build, If there's anything else that only you can be, a canoe for yourself or, no. It's the cadre. That's the boat we need to build, right? Layla, this is one of my favorite Allman Brothers songs. Boom, boom, boom. I'm on the blues. You me blue. Ah. So many good songs. And that's why I want to bring the band on the road. So the kids in App State who are, think they're doing something by trying to make sustainability, they're about 110 years too late. There was a conference in Europe, in France, back in 1890, when they said, oh, the world's going to end soon, overpopulation, can't feed everybody, oh, we're polluting everything. And Mr. Rockefeller sent one of his boys there because he wanted to see what they were talking about. And that's when they started to control the narrative about the environment. That's when the oil companies and the Koch brothers are part of that cabal, right? And that's where the term, oil coming from fossil fuel, please, it's not from dead animals, no. Oil is the synovial fluid of the planet. The more we pump it out, the more unhappy Gaia gets with us, right? So, and, the 2010 BP debacle in the Gulf of Mexico, it was done on purpose so they could just cover the bottom of the, because they had punctured so many holes in the Gulf of Mexico, millions, over the 60, 70 years that they've been drilling for oil out there. So it was like oozing up, and so they needed an excuse to put that suppressant in. And by doing that, they changed the whole biome of the Gulf, which changed the whole biome of the Atlantic, and soon to change the biome of the Pacific. So we're in a position where there is no sustainability of this, right? And that's why, Donnie was put in there, because he is throwing sand in the gears of every little thing that's kind of, I mean, why did who started the EPA and the all of the environmental stuff? It was Richard Nixon. And why did he do it? Is because he basically took America off the gold standard, right, and put it on the oil standard. It made us the petrodollar. Now, after England was the petro pound and it collapsed, we took it over. And the thing we backed it up wasn't with gold, because our Anunnaki masters are taking the gold off the planet. And so he had to back it up with something, and it was with our natural resources. And so he had to somewhat legally put restraint on the consumption of those things, and also make the ownership with inside this thing that would cover the US dollar as the petrodollar. And that's one reason why today we're the number one producer of oil, to be the petrodollar. And that's why Donnie, the only thing he really did was pass that tax bill. And if you look at it, it changed everything, not just giving the rich all the money, but it changed all the nonprofit statuses. It changed a lot of things, to the point where it was the tip of the hat to the corporate structure that the United States is. You drive around America and you go through all these towns. It says, welcome to the incorporated village, the incorporated town, the incorporated city, the incorporated state. What does that mean? They're all corporations. We're a corporate state. We're run by, admiralty law. When you go into a courthouse and you see that American flag with a gold little fringe around it, that's the admiralty law, symbol. And what's interesting, you can go into a lot of municipal buildings and they'll have the American flag without the fringe and the American flag with the fringe, right? So, and usually in front of the buildings, they have it without the fringe. So there are all these things right in our face saying, we are expendable. We are, they want to, you go to the Georgia Stone. So, hey, Aaron, have you ever driven by the Georgia Stones on your trucking adventures? Yeah. Coke. Yes. Oh, you're right on, Jane. And so, that's where we're at. So forget about the environmental movement. Forget about standing up against this or that. What we have to do is, in every day and every way, take the piece of love's co-creation and make it stronger. Now, standing up against these things are righteous. You should go and do it. These kids who are in Hong Kong, they're not just doing this for Hong Kong. They're doing this for the world, because China, was brought into the New World Order by Henry Kissinger and the Hidden Hand, right? And largest population country. And look at India. India is supposed to be the world's largest democracy. Well, how can it be that when they have just stepped on a state in their country? It's like if the United States went into Texas and said, okay, everyone has to stay at home. It's all martial law. We're going to own everything. We're going to take all your property. and you have no rights. And oh, by the way, all you Baptists, you can't be Baptist anymore. You have to be Roman Catholics, or vice versa. And that's happened in America all its history. You should go, there are a number of good books. This guy who was on your daily constitution on ETSU last night, that's what they talked about. Madison and the founding fathers and the First Amendment and all of that. Back in the 1920s, they were hanging Catholics. The Irish and the Italians. It's like, they treated as Mexicans and Muslims are being treated today. At times, were treated, like they were Mexican Muslims. It's like this isn't new. It's what it is. And that's because no one wants to take responsibility to step up, to be an elder, to help all our relations. Well, all of you guys go Google, Georgia Stones. These stones out in the middle of nowhere. They put them up in the 70s when, Interstate 80, whatever, and Interstate 75 weren't even there. And somebody bought 100 acres, mowed off, cleared out a space in the woods the size of a football field, put down sod and sprinklers, and put up these stones. And they have written on them, like the 10 Commandments, all the things, world population has to, go below, 600 million. Everybody else has to die, blah, blah, blah. Right? Kind of what the New World Order wants to see, a nice new slave race, But right now, we're in that betwixt and between. And we, as the cadre, we don't need to build a big ark. We don't have to be Noah. What we do have to be is a cadre. And you don't all have to come visit me in the deep green. What you have to do is wherever you are, in every day, in every way, in every interaction you have with trees, bushes, flies, bumblebees, dogs, cats, and human beings, you have to be an unconditional love of forgiveness and empathy. That is love's co-creation. That's the only way we're going to get through this. And the only way we can get, in the beginning, everything was dark. And then there was the word. What was the word? Love. Love's conscious free will. Buddha's on the side of the road humming like this light right here. He had this light over his head. And the traveler asked him, so what are you? Are you a god? And Buddha replied, no, I'm awake. So we all have to have this light above our head. That is the white, blue light that's in the fireplace of this is the eternal flame right here. It's above us all. That connects us to our higher self, right? To love's co-creation. So we all have to be that. So the boat we need to build is the cadre, right? Anyway. So, everyone said good morning, and made a few comments. So let's hear something from you guys that I can talk up against. I just gave you a whole bunch of stuff, right? Boom. So what do you guys think of God and God's Son? This kind of thinking is whoops. I'm reading this little book here. I'm reading all my books over again. The Prayer of Jabez. breaking through the blessed life, to the blessed life. Finally, Peter relents when the apostle opens the door. Mr. Jones almost knocks him over. In his haste to enter, it turns out that the enormous building is filled with row after row of shelves, floors to ceiling, each stacked neatly with white boxes tied red ribbons. These boxes all have names on them. Mr. Jones uses aloud. Then turning to Peter, he asked, "Do I have one?" "Yes, you do." Peter tries to guide Mr. Jones back outside. "Frankly," Peter says, "if it were you," but Mr. Jones is already dashing towards the J's aisle to find his box. Peter follows, shaking his head. He catches up with Mr. Jones as he is slipping the red ribbon off his box and popping the lid. Looking inside, Jones has a moment of instant recognition, and he lets out a deep sigh like one Peter has so many times before. Because there in Mr. Jones' box are all the blessings that God wanted to give him while he was on earth, but Mr. Jones never asked or had the time to receive them. "Ask," promised Jesus, "and it will be given to you." Matthew 7:7. "Do not have because you do not ask," said James. James 4:2. Even though there is no limit to God's goodness, if you didn't ask him for a blessing yesterday, you didn't get all that you were supposed to have. So yes, everybody needs to ask for that blessing. What you want. Got to build a love boat. That's right. That love boat is the cadre, right? And your life is a plank. And those prayers that you ask God for those blessings, those are the nails, right? So that's what we got to build, a love boat, right? I love that, love boat. So, the thing is everyone gets so upset about, oh, the life sucks. Oh, it's so bad. It's polluted. All those Mexicans. Oh, the rapists. No, forget about it. I told you a story a number of shows back. I had a beautiful girlfriend, Stephanie, and she was the most amazing, beautiful model. She was a Ford model. She was a Sports Illustrated model, and yet she was brilliant. I met her at the New School, and she was studying aesthetics and theology. Right? And she had come from a number of theologic entities, and that's why she loved me, because that's where I was at. So whenever I walked into a room with her, she was always dressed to the nines. I was always like this. She was always on my arm, and she was like, with her high heels on. She was at least a good 6 inches taller than I was, maybe 8, and she was amazing. And she was a wild child. She would do pretty much anything. And she came from a rich Swiss banking family, and so she had this really exotic accent, right? And her father once offered me $1 million to marry her, for me to move back to Switzerland, and he'd make me a Swiss citizen, and put me in the banking biz, and I'd never have anything to worry about. I'd be a uber rich man, and he'd be a happy grandfather, and we'd have little children running around our feet, and finally his wild child would settle down with the man of her dreams. And right there is what put the block between Stephanie and me, is her father offering me $1 million, and he said, "I'll write you the check right now." It's like, anyway, we lived in, before we got our loft in, what was the name of that place? It was on the West Village. It was a old phone building the city got and turned into lofts for real artists. So we could be like the Paris Commune. Westbeth is what it was called. And, I was one of the people who talked about it years and years before to John Lindsay. And when they finally built it, they said, "Oh, Al needs to be here." So I got one. But I put it in Stephanie's name. And because I didn't want to take care of it. And she really loved it. It was her favorite place. She had her daddy's place uptown, but she loved this place. So, I put it in her name. So, but first we lived in a really nasty apartment on in the Lower East Side, Avenue D, in 1982, and maybe 82, and because Don and I got divorced in 80. Anyway, we split in 80. We got divorced legally a number of years later. But anyway, so it was a really hot summer night. And I had on the fire escape, we had this like gate at locked so people couldn't get in, right? We had like 10 locks on our door. But it was so hot, the only way you could open the window to let any cool air in was to open the gate. And so I was asleep, and we were both naked, and Stephanie had a body like unbelievable. And and she was 29, I guess, and I was 32. Anyway, and she was at the quintessential height of her everything, right? Of her intellect, of her wild childness, her beauty, her everything, right? Her career as a model. And she had a lot of money out of her own being a model. And so she really didn't need to be living. And her daddy had this big, fancy Upper East Side condo that he was always in Switzerland, and that's where he just, instead of being in a hotel, he actually liked being in the Waldorf more than his. Anyway, so there we are in bed. It's really hot, and I can't fall asleep, but I'm just sweating, and Stephanie, she's just like a cool cucumber over there, totally naked, and I'm just looking at her going, boy, am I lucky. God loves me. And then all of a sudden I hear it crash. And I look up, and there is a guy standing in front of me with a gigantic knife. Sharp, pointy, gonna kill you in a second with that knife. And he had this look on his face, and he was almost dripping blood, he had, his dirty skin, he had sores. He was like, he's looking at us. I'm going to kill this guy, because I was lying there. I wasn't sitting up, just lying there, and I had like one eye open, and I was like looking at this, and I'm looking around, not moving my head, like, where's something I can throw at this? How can I? And there's like 10 locks on the door. Like, I would get halfway through before, and so I'm going, this ain't good. And so I'm trying to figure out what to do. And all of a sudden, I hear Gaynor going, "What's wrong?" And I look up, and she's gotten out of bed, and she's standing up in front of this guy in knife's range. And she goes, "It's okay. You don't have to be scared. Nothing's going to hurt you here. And I love you." And she puts her hand on his shoulder, and all of his fear and anger just goes right out of her. Him, not her. And her love and angelicness goes pouring into him, and he starts weeping. I've done so many bad things. I'm such an evil person. I'm terrible. I was going to kill him and rape you and then kill you. And I'm just so done. You let me kill myself here. Now she takes the blade out of his hand. She puts it down. Doesn't take it away, just puts it down out of his hand. She says, it's okay. And she's totally naked, and he's like just wearing a pair of funky shorts and a t-shirt and crappy shoes, and she goes and hugs him with a deep, loving hug. Most people wouldn't even touch this guy, thinking his open source would, give them something that they would die from. And he could have had every, disease known to man. And he looked like he did. And he starts weeping on her shoulder, and she goes over and gets him a glass of water, and she goes, here, drink this. And then she gets him another drink, and she kind of blesses the water and says, from this point on, you don't have to be that person you said you were. You can be a new person. You can start a new life. And, and you're doing it right here. You just cried. You just, gave amends for all the terrible things you've done. Now go off and be that better person. And he turns and he goes out and he leaves his blade there. He doesn't pick it up. And he goes out, he unlocks all the doors, and then he comes back in and locks the slam lock. He goes, just so the door is locked. Right? And a few days later, I met one of my mentors, a guy named Adam Purple, who was one of the old elders, and he had, was an anarchist from the old days, from the, 20s, And these guys weren't with a leather jacket and an A on it. He always had this kind of rumply suit on, and he rode a little bicycle. Once he became Adam Purple, when I knew him back in the 60s, he hung out in Washington Square Park and would play chess for money. And I would play, I was younger in those days, and we would just play chess and talk. And there was a period when, like around 2 to 3, when it was pretty hot in the summertime in Washington, there'd be nobody there. And so he'd have nobody to, in the mornings, he'd have people to play with, in the afternoons and evening, he'd have people to play with for money. And they used the clock, Anyway, so Adam Purple, he got that name because he started just wearing purple. And he was the guy who showed us how to take over abandoned buildings and to use the Homestead Act of 1876. And he used to take over these buildings and he would go get, mattresses that have the metal inside, the springs, and he would make a fence all the way around the building, the lot, or whatever building was in, and he would plant hawthorn and witch hazel and rose bushes in these things. And he would use the base of these. And so the bed frames were like 8 feet high and about, 4 foot wide. And he just put them all around the building, wire them up together, and then start growing these bushes until, within one season, they were pretty big and they had gigantic growing. So to get through those bed springs and those thorny things was, quite an endeavor. And he would have a secret way in. So anyway, a couple of days after this event in our apartment with the crazed killer, Adam said, hey, this guy came to me, and I woke up and I found him, and he found his way into, my inner sanctum, which is pretty tough. And he was crying, and he was talking about how he almost killed these 2 angels. And he described them, and he said, boy, it had to be Stephanie, and that's got to be you. Is that what happened? And I said, yeah. So anyway, that guy, went under Adam's tutelage. And from that point on, that guy became a saint. Just, always helping everyone, always being there, always being the better self, And that's, he was the love boat. So that's kind of what we got to be, the cadre of the love boat. And I'd like to know where Stephanie is now. She, I moved on after, her daddy offered me $1 million to marry her. And she went off and did a photo shoot. And I stayed in the loft while she was out of New York. And then this guy showed up and said, "Oh, Stephanie said I could live here." And that was her new boyfriend. So I kind of moved on. I did a little journey. Where was I in those days? I hadn't gone on to Ithaca. I guess I might have gone back to Ireland, or I might have gone to Brazil. Might have been in that period of time. Or it might have been in the Lower East Side doing the housing authority, one of those. Anyway, so every day, in every way, you have to take that piece of the earth and make it stronger. And that's the love boat. The cadre is the love boat, right? So go check out ETSU. It's radio shows. Go check out New Dimensions, and it's like newdimensions.org. Go look for on ETSU your daily Constitution. Terry Gross and Fresh Air, and the show she did yesterday probably will be up on her site tomorrow, because I looked for it today and it wasn't there the day before yesterday's show. I guess they're a day behind. And another, Democracy Now! Is an interesting show. They have that on ETSU. Another really good show to go look for is alternativeradio.org. And that's that guy has been doing interviews since like the 40s. He's got so many amazing shows. And that's why I kind of want to start Humanities Artists Trust International, a nonprofit that could umbrella, cultural things everywhere in the world, right? And the first thing I want to start is the Institute for Aesthetically Adept and Appropriate Technologies, which would be like any one of 100 nonprofit think tanks that the Koch brothers own. But it wouldn't, because it would be looking at the alternative and appropriate aesthetically adept technology, right? Like poetry and theater and not economy. So, and I want to take it all on the road with the traveling video art circus, right? And I want to use our focused clientele would be college students and universities, because they have this thing called Student Activity Fund. Every semester, they collect a few dollars from each kid and have that. They got to spend it every semester. So that would be a good, economic thing to make money for this whole thing, to prime the pump before we start getting people's grants. And in each college that we would visit, we would leave a bit of the cadre, and it would be the freely inquiring society. Right? Freely meaning not free like it doesn't cost anything, but free as in open-minded, inquiring to understand society, the cadre, community, right? So, that's what I'm going to spend the rest of my years at, and I'm not worrying about where I'm going to spend the winter, because I'm already praying, for, I'm asking God, as I always do, to take care of me, to put me in the right place at the right time, because I have any talent to be in the right place at the right time and know it and step up to it, step into it. Rather than go, I can't, I got to stay at my Burger King job. I gotta work for that nonprofit that is working on sustainability. No, sustaining this present reality is a waste of time. You know? So go look at New Dimensions. Go look at Democracy Now! Go look at alternativeradio.org. Go look at Fresh Air. Go look at your Constitutional Daily. All those things. So, anything else anybody want? Oh, look at that. 55 minutes and 55 seconds. So we're getting close here. So if anyone's got anything else to say it now. Otherwise, I'm going to say I love you guys. It's 11:42, almost noon. So, whoever was supposed to show up didn't show up. Sorry about that. And I'll talk to you later. So wait till 56. Anybody else got something to say? Say it now. Time is slowing down. It's waiting for you guys to say something. It's pretty amazing, Said I was going to leave at 56, and it's been taking 3 minutes to get there. But nobody said anything, so I will say I love you. Yep. Catch you later, gang. See you, Twitchy. See you, Aaron, Jane, all the above.